Okay, we've all been there, right? That morning grogginess or the afternoon slump that just won't quit.
Tell me about it.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the science of sleep and wakefulness.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Yeah. We'll be using Andrew Huberman's Master Your Sleep and Be More Alert When Awake video as our guide.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack some really cool insights that hopefully you can actually use to sleep better and feel more alert when you're awake.
I mean, who doesn't want to sleep better?
Right.
Sign me up.
So sleep, right, it's not just about feeling rested. It impacts like
Jumping, yeah.
our mental health,
Physical health.
how well we function during the day.
Yeah, it's crazy how much it affects.
It's wild. So let's get into like the science behind this whole sleep and wakefulness thing.
Okay, let's do it.
Huberman talks about two major forces at play, adenosine and the circadian rhythm.
Right.
Can you break those down for us?
Okay, so think of adenosine as this like sleep pressure that builds up the longer you're awake. So the more adenosine, the sleepier you feel.
So that's that feeling like after a long day when you just want to crash.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like your brain's hitting the snooze button.
Exactly.
What about those times, though, when like you're exhausted, but suddenly you get a second wind?
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't seem very adenosine-y.
Right, so that's where your circadian rhythm comes in.
Uh-huh.
Think of it as your body's internal clock. Like it's this timer that regulates your sleep-wake cycles.
Gotcha. So it's this constant battle between adenosine building up and my circadian rhythm trying to keep me on schedule.
Yeah, like a tug of war in your brain.
Totally. So what influences this circadian rhythm?
Well, the most powerful influencer is actually something we encounter every day. Sunlight.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
So even if I'm in a brightly lit office all day, it's not the same as being outside?
Nope, not even close. Our eyes have these special cells called retinal ganglion cells,
Okay.
and they're super sensitive to sunlight, especially in the morning. So when those cells detect sunlight, especially at a low solar angle, like early in the day or late afternoon, they send a signal to the brain's master clock. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
Okay.
It's a mouthful, but it's basically the control center for our sleep-wake cycle. And it also regulates things like hormone production.
So to really optimize my sleep, I need to get some sun.
Exactly. Getting outside within that first hour of waking up can make a huge difference.
For how long? Like, do I need to be out there for hours?
Even just a few minutes can help. And here's a pro tip.
Yeah.
Skip the sunglasses. Direct sunlight exposure is way more effective than viewing it through a window. Like 50 times more effective.
Wow, 50 times? That's insane. I had no idea it was that powerful.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Getting outside first thing in the morning isn't always possible.
Right.
What about those of us who are stuck inside?
Well, sunlight is definitely the best, but there are a few things you can try. Like light therapy lamps are designed to mimic sunlight.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
But it's important to use them correctly. You don't want to be using bright light in the evening because that can actually mess with your sleep.
Right, because light suppresses melatonin. It's basically telling your body it's still daytime when it should be winding down.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits of light, but you mentioned there's also a dark side to light, right? What happens when we get light at the wrong time?
Well, as the day goes on, our retinal sensitivity actually increases.
So we become more sensitive to light.
Yeah, which means we're more susceptible to the disruptive effects of even dim light as we get closer to bedtime.
So even like my bedside lamp could be messing with my sleep.
It's possible, yeah.
Wow, that explains a lot. How does light disrupt our sleep at night?
Well, remember adenosine?
The sleepiness molecule.
Yes. When we expose ourselves to bright light late at night, especially between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., it actually suppresses dopamine.
Oh, so staying up late on my phone is a double whammy.
Pretty much.
Keeps my mind racing and messes with my dopamine.
Exactly.
No wonder I feel groggy in the morning. Is there anything else going on besides the dopamine thing?
Yeah, so late night light exposure can also activate a part of the brain that Huberman calls the disappointment nucleus.
The disappointment nucleus.
Yeah, it's like our brain is telling us, hey, you should be sleeping, not staring at a screen.
Oof, I feel called out.
We all do. But it's a good reminder that darkness in the evening is super important.
Yeah, for sure. So we need to create like a sanctuary of darkness, trade those bright overhead lights for cozy lamps, and put our phones to sleep before we do.
Exactly.
Makes sense. This whole light thing is super interesting. I'm always up for a little self-experimentation.
Oh, I like that.
Can we use light strategically to like shift our sleep schedules?
You're thinking like a true deep diver, and the answer is yes. It's all about understanding these concepts called phase advances and phase delays.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are phase advances and delays?
So phase advances are when you shift your sleep schedule earlier, and phase delays shift it later. And light exposure is key for both.
So if I want to become a morning person, I need to get bright light earlier in the day. And if I'm struggling to fall asleep early, I should avoid bright light in the evening.
Exactly. You're basically hacking your internal clock by using light as a cue.
I love it. It takes a little consistency, but it can be super effective for adjusting your sleep patterns. This is giving me hope for finally becoming a morning person. What about those times, though, when even with all the right light cues, my mind just won't shut off at night?
Oh, I know that feeling.
It's like my thoughts are on a constant loop.
Yeah, that's really common. And it brings us to another powerful tool, non-sleep, deep rest, or
NSDR.
NSDR. Okay, NSDR. So how does that actually work? Is it like forcing myself to relax?
That's the thing. It's actually better to use body-based techniques than to try and force sleep with your mind.
Interesting.
Things like yoga nidra and hypnosis fall into that category.
So instead of lying there stressing about not sleeping, I should just focus on relaxing my body.
It sounds a little counterintuitive, but hey, I'm willing to try anything.
It makes sense when you think about it. Like when we're stressed, our bodies tense up, right?
Right.
But if we can consciously relax our muscles and slow down our breathing, we're sending signals to our brains that it's okay to rest.
So we're kind of hacking our nervous system through physical sensations.
Exactly.
I like that. But does this NSDR stuff, does it actually have scientific backing?
Oh, absolutely. There was this really interesting study from Denmark.
Okay.
And they found that NSDR can actually reset the dopamine system.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. And it led to improvements in motor planning and focus.
Wait, hold on. So not only can NSDR help us relax and sleep better, but it can also boost our focus and productivity during the day.
Yep.
That's wild. How does that work?
So basically, these NSDR techniques guide you into this state of deep relaxation that's really similar to sleep.
Okay.
But you don't actually lose consciousness. It's like you're hitting the reset button for your alertness and your emotional stability, and that makes it easier to fall asleep later and feel more refreshed when you wake up.
It's like giving our minds and bodies a mini vacation.
Exactly.
I've even heard that some yoga studios are offering NSDR classes now.
I think so, yeah.
I had to check that out. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Light, internal clocks, how to hack our nervous systems. What about supplements? There are so many sleep aids out there these days. Are they worth it?
Supplements can be helpful, but it's really important to focus on the fundamentals first.
Okay. What are the fundamentals?
Things like light exposure,
Right.
diet, and exercise. Once you have those dialed in, then you can start to explore supplements as something to maybe add to your routine.
Got it. So supplements aren't like a magic bullet, but they could be helpful alongside of solid sleep routine. Are there any specific supplements that you would recommend looking into?
Magnesium is a good one, particularly magnesium threonate and theanine. They've shown some promise. They can kind of help relax the mind and body, which can lead to better sleep.
Magnesium and theanine, I've seen those. They're in a lot of those chill out teas and drinks.
Right.
Anything I should watch out for with those?
Well, just keep in mind that they can sometimes cause drowsiness in the morning.
Oh, okay.
So it's always best to start with a lower dose and experiment to see what works best for you. And of course, talk to your doctor before adding any new supplements to your routine.
Good point. Better safe than sorry, especially with sleep. Any other supplements that are worth mentioning?
Apigenin is another one that has shown some potential for improving sleep. It comes from chamomile.
Okay.
But it's important to note that it can also inhibit estrogen production.
Estrogen inhibiting. That's interesting. So it might not be the best choice for everyone.
Right, especially women.
Gotcha.
Because, both men and women need estrogen for various bodily functions.
Right.
So it's always crucial to talk to a healthcare professional before using Apigenin or any other supplement, really.
That's a good reminder for all of us. Supplements can be powerful tools.
They can.
We need to do our research and treat them with respect. Before we get too carried away with supplements and hacks, I think it's worth circling back to those foundational habits we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. We can't underestimate the importance of things like sunlight, a balanced diet, regular exercise, and a consistent sleep schedule.
Right.
Those are the cornerstones of good sleep and optimal wakefulness.
It's like building a house. You need a strong foundation before you start adding all the fancy features.
Exactly.
Speaking of fancy features, though, let's talk about naps. Are they good or bad for sleep?
Naps can be a little tricky.
How
A
so?
well-timed nap can be great, give you an energy boost and improve your alertness.
Okay.
But if you nap for too long or too close to bedtime, it can actually mess with your sleep cycle.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot. How long is too long for a nap?
Ideally, you want to keep your naps to around 20 or 30 minutes. That way, you get a little refresh without going into those deep sleep stages that can leave you feeling groggy when you wake up.
So power naps are in, marathon naps are out. I've definitely been guilty of those.
We all have.
You know, I've heard some people say they wake up feeling more tired after a nap. Why is that?
That usually happens when people aren't sleeping well at night.
Mm,
So they end up dipping into those deeper sleep stages during their nap, and that's what leads to that groggy feeling.
okay.
Or it could just be that their napping schedule is kind of messing with their nighttime sleep.
So it seems like naps are kind of a personal experiment. We need to figure out what works best for our own sleep needs and schedules.
Exactly.
But what about when you hit that afternoon slump and a nap just isn't possible? What are some other ways to combat that midday energy dip?
That's where those NSDR techniques we were talking about can be really helpful. Even just a short 10-minute session of yoga nidra or a guided meditation can help to kind of reset your nervous system and boost your alertness.
So NSDR isn't just for bedtime. It's like a secret weapon for energy and focus throughout the day.
Exactly.
I love that. I'm definitely going to be incorporating more NSDR into my routine. It seems like so much of this just comes down to figuring out what works best for each person.
Absolutely. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
So it's all about experimenting and paying attention to your body's cues.
Yeah, we're all unique, and our sleep needs are no different. So we need to be like our own sleep detectives.
I like that.
Speaking of, before we wrap up, are there any specific things people should avoid if they want to improve their sleep,
Yeah.
besides the obvious, like late night caffeine and doom scrolling?
Those are definitely big ones. Another thing to think about is the timing of your cortisol pulse.
Oh, right. Cortisol.
Remember how we talked about cortisol being that wake-up hormone?
Yeah, it's supposed to be highest in the morning. What does that have to do with sleep?
Right. It's supposed to peak in the morning to help us get going. But if that cortisol surge happens too late in the day, it can make it really difficult to fall asleep.
Ah, that makes total sense. So how can we make sure our cortisol is on the right schedule?
You guessed it. Getting that morning sunlight exposure, it sets our internal clock and helps regulate hormone production, including cortisol.
Okay, so sunlight is a win-win. It helps with our circadian rhythm and keeps our cortisol in check.
But what if our cortisol is already out of whack? Like, what can we do to get it back on track?
Well, there are a few things you can try. Exercise, for example, is a great way to regulate cortisol. Just make sure you're not working out too close to bedtime,
Why not?
because that can actually increase cortisol and make it harder to fall asleep.
Interesting. So morning workouts are a good thing, but late night gym sessions are probably not the best for sleep.
Exactly.
What about stress? I feel like everyone I know is stressed out these days.
You're right. Stress is a huge factor. And when you're chronically stressed, your body is constantly pumping out cortisol, which, like we've been talking about, can interfere with sleep.
Exactly. So managing stress through things like mindfulness, meditation, or just spending time in nature can make a big difference for your sleep.
So it's like stress is public enemy number one for good sleep. We really need to get a handle on that.
It's true.
Okay, so to recap, managing stress, getting those morning workouts in, and of course, that all-important sunlight exposure are key for keeping our cortisol levels in check.
You got it. It all comes down to working with our body's natural rhythms, not against them.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. We've learned so much. Adenosine and circadian rhythms, light exposure, NSDR, supplements, the role of cortisol. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of sleep.
I'm glad to hear that. Knowledge is power, right?
For sure. So for our listeners out there, what's the one key takeaway you want them to remember from all of this?
I would say sleep is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Yeah.
It's truly fundamental to our physical, mental, and emotional health.
Well said. We need to prioritize sleep, just like we prioritize diet and exercise.
I agree.
It's that important.
Absolutely. And remember, small changes can make a big difference.
They really can.
Just start by incorporating one or two of the things we talked about today and see what happens.
Exactly. Play around with light exposure, try some NSDR, experiment with different sleep routines until you find something that works for you.
That's the key. And don't forget, consistency is key. It takes time to retrain your body and mind, so be patient.
So, everyone listening, it's time to put this knowledge into action. What's one small change you can make to improve your sleep? Maybe embrace that morning sunlight, try a yoga nidra session, or ditch the screens before bed. Whatever it is, commit to making sleep a priority.
You won't regret it.
Right. Better sleep means better focus, better mood, a healthier you.
Exactly.
So, until next time, sleep well, everyone. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to tackle the day. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic.
And who knows, maybe we'll even explore those breathing techniques and stress management strategies you mentioned. There's always more to learn.
I can't wait. Until then, sleep well, everyone.